Welcome everyone to the Cardano Effect Podcast, episode 72. The purpose of this podcast is to take high-level developer information and projects that are occurring within the Cardano space and break them down into bite-sized, consumable pieces of information for everyday use. I'm your host, Philippe, and let's get this podcast started. Rick and myself are the hosts of the Cardano Effect Podcast, and we have a very special episode for you today. It's a stake pool operator episode. Rick will be introducing everyone shortly. I want to jump right into the mix of things. I want to also thank everyone on Reddit for answering and submitting questions for our pool operators today. We always have fun with this series, and we're going to continue doing this weeks on end. So without further ado, I'd like to remind everyone that none of what we say on this podcast is financial advice. Remember, you are your best financial advisor, and if you don't think you are, you need to find someone who's qualified to do so. So Rick, how are you doing this morning? What's going on? What's happening?
Philippe, doing great today. Thank you for asking. I would like to give a shout out to IOHK for sponsoring this podcast. Thank you very much, IOHK. We very much appreciate it. And I would also like to remind any new viewers and listeners to the podcast, this podcast is available on all major streaming apps. So if you're working out or driving in your car, you can listen to the podcast on audio. I want to get over to our stake pool operators right away, and we'll get into the Reddit questions. We put up a Reddit thread to get inputs from the community on things that they would like to know for the stake pool operators to answer. It doesn't have to be stake pool specific. It can be anything Cardano. And Philippe and I have an old kind of a rule of thumb that if there's any question that cannot be answered by a guest, we have to answer it. We are required to answer it. And our answer will stand until corrected or otherwise stated. All right, so with that said, I want to get over to our stake pool operators. New to the podcast, we have Papacarp, inventor of Pool Tool, everybody's favorite pastime. And with Pool Tool there, it helps break people of their blockfolio habits. So thank you for that, Papacarp. We also have Oldpa Sync joining us today. New to the podcast, and Oldpa Sync has been a great mentor and facilitator to people who are new to Cardano, new pool operators, bringing their pools up online. He's done an awesome job in Telegram in helping people get going. So we appreciate your work, Oldpa Sync, over there. And also returning to the podcast from previous episodes, we have ksolomon, Chris Graffagnino, we have James Kelly returning from the hacker episode, and we have Old Crypto Geek, who's been on with a few of our other episodes as well, I think involving the Saturn Network and some other talks we had on the podcast. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the podcast. We very much appreciate all of the work that you do. And if we could start off, we'll start off with Papacarp. If you could tell us a little bit about your pool and your work with Pool Tool. Just give us a quick intro on that, and then Oldpa Sync, and then we'll get into the Reddit questions.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I started out way back in October, and we were working with the JAnalyze, which is the original tool we had for counting blocks, and felt like there was an opportunity to put it online. So that's what I did. I put it on Pool Tool for everybody. It started out just as a way to learn about View and kind of develop from there. So that's how that all happened. The pool I started was called Love, still going. I have two more called Aiju and Libe as well, which is the Japanese word for love, and also the German word for love. Those are very small and no one's in there, but I just wanted to experiment a little bit with multiple pools while we were doing this testnet thing and see if I could do those. So that's what I do.
Fantastic work. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Oldpa Sync, tell us about your pool, the name, ticker, goals, anything?
Well, the pool is a JSCS pool. Those letters have significance to me, but no one else. It doesn't really matter. It's a small pool. The pool is run on Windows. When I first became a Cardano enthusiast, and they said that this would run on a Rock Pi, I said, well, then it probably should run on a pretty weak Windows 10 system. So I decided to see if I could do that. And I've had some success, even though there's kind of a Linux bent to everything IOHK does. In the early days, they did put out some Windows tools, and I was able to use those and modify them, and I still use them in a modified way today. So I'm the JSCS pool is a small pool, but it's an enthusiast pool, technical enthusiast, and an evangelist pool. So I hope people will join it.
Awesome, thank you, Oldpa Sync. And Kyle, returning, what's your pool again?
Yeah, I operate Frog, so I run the Frog pool. I threw a frog in the pool, and you know, we're just trying to do our part, and you know, spend a lot of time in the communities and working to help up and coming pool operators come up. And I'm also working to help facilitate the Stake Pool Bootstrap initiative, which aids in facilitating delegation to smaller pools to give them a shot at making slots to help get them in the game. So, our goal is really to just kind of be here and increase the value for Cardano. And we're doing that in, a couple other ways that we'll probably talk about later.
All right. Well, thank you for your leadership you've provided there and the mentorship from Oldpa Sync. Any new pool operator still up and coming still has a chance. They still have a fighting chance.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. All right. Okay. And Chris Graffagnino, thank you for all of your work. There are many people running successfully using your guides that you posted on GitHub. So what's your pool ticker? And tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, my main pool is MASTR Stake, MASTR. I'm starting a second pool here upcoming. I'll tell you a little bit about that a little bit later. My main focus has been helping newcomers get their pool set up. And, honestly, I'm doing more of that than anything. So if you want to set up your own pool, email me at graffwebdev@gmail.com.
Nice. Glad. It's great having you three on here because it's like anyone who's setting up a pool, the knowledge is here, right here on the podcast. Thank you for that. James Kelly, our resident hacker. How's it going? What's your pool name and what you've been doing lately?
Well, I'm calling it Stake Army, and the ticker is AKA. So that if I ever change the name, it would also be known as. That's where I got the AKA from. But it's still, well, right off the bat, it was huge because somebody gave me a golden ticket, then took it back the next day. So now I'm a small pool. I've got about 2.5 million staked with me. As an individual, I'm very security focused. I do security audits and penetration testing and so forth. So I kind of bring that angle to things.
Yes, and thank you for that as well. And it was a great episode with the hackers episode, and we'll have to do some more on that. And old Crypto Geek, the friendliest guy on Telegram. Tell us a little bit about your pool and what's going on.
Thank you, Rick. My pool is a Phoenix Stake pool. I run it with a few other individuals that been helping me out with software. We've been developing some tools as well. Casper is the main one that we've released already. We're working on some other things behind the scenes right now. And much like the rest of these gentlemen, our goal is just to promote decentralization and increase awareness and education on Cardano as a whole.
Sounds good. Thanks for joining us today. It's a Saturday, by the way, when we're recording this. So I don't know when you guys are watching this, but these stake pool operators are taking their weekend time to come and talk and have a good time. So support their pools if you can. So Rick, let's jump over to the Reddit questions and start the debate or start some conversation. How does that sound?
Sounds good. You want me to lead it off here?
Yes, you can go ahead.
All right, and people are following along, and these are mostly for the pool operators to answer. And the first one comes from Lazy Horse, a very controversial thing, a good thing to talk about. And Lazy Horse says, "I would love to get your and the stake pool operators joining view regarding current situation with the Cardano Foundation registration and the 1PCT pool, not just 1PCT in the registration, or 1PCE in the registration, the multi-pool Sybil attack issue, and how big of an issue is it that pledge isn't implemented on ITN? My own point of view is that this should be on the very top of the to-do list for IOHK." So the core of the question here, and Lazy Horse also has another question, but the core of that question is, what is your view on the Cardano Foundation registration and 1PCT and the Sybil attack issue? Who wants to take that one first? Popcorn style.
Rick, before we do popcorn style, can we explain to viewers and listeners who are not familiar with what's going on with 1PCT and the Cardano Foundation registration, the whole issue? Just give them a quick backdrop.
Yeah, sure. Does anyone want to do that? Get a take on that?
I guess I accidentally volunteered by opening my mouth. But it's a pool operator that apparently has a large amount to stake. I think maybe they stake for other people, perhaps, as a business, and they've registered a bunch of pools. I saw one thing that suggested that they wanted to register a bunch of the potential pool IDs to keep other people from doing it. One of the big concerns might be that you'd have a single entity running a ton of pools that are affiliated and people joining them all, and give them too much control over the network. Anybody have anything else to say about that?
I have, you know, the pool registration itself is happening on chain, right? So there is no censorship of actual pool registration per se. The ticker registry is being run by the Cardano Foundation for the sole purpose of providing unique identifiers for the Daedalus and Yoroi wallets, right? So the Cardano Foundation is well within their right to censor or control who is able to list what pools in their wallet software.
That's right.
But that doesn't stop anyone from registering a pool and promoting it in any other way they see fit.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you won't have to use Daedalus forever. There'll be other options. So,
right. And I mean, like if I wanted to take the same route, I could write a script that would create the JSON files for every conceivable 5-character string available and just flood GitHub with all of them, right?
Right.
So would that be fair?
Well, I think my personal opinion is a couple issues. First off, I think it's an interesting experiment because Binance has to cannibalize somebody, right? So when they come in with 0%, maybe it's those 1% guys that get it. And then twofold, we have to remember that this is the Rust code. It's not built to spec. So just because a feature is not here does not mean that it's making it into the final implementation. And if you guys understand software development and how understanding how complex systems are developed, time to market's an issue. It matters. And if every single intricate facet is put into the Rust code, we'll be in development for another year. So I don't think everything should necessarily be addressed in ITN. I think Cardano handled it the appropriate way. And that's just my personal opinion.
Right. They're handling it. They have, I think one PCT has maybe 10 or 11 pools right now. And hats off to them. They're very well run. So
they wanted to register over 25 tickers.
That's right.
Yeah, and they tried to foray it as the fact that I'm just doing it so no one else does it because someone tried to milk off my brand, where subsequently he directly admitted that I'll probably release them one at a time. So
sure,
I
mean, why wouldn't you if you had that much demand for your? I mean, just sort of, if it was any other product,
sure.
You have massive demand, meet the demand.
Well, and I think here's an interesting factor. Any pool that's really operating at performance, I mean, you look at what Frog is doing, sure, we have a 7.49% tax. That's a lot higher than a lot of the pools. But when you break down the numbers, we're beating 1% on ROI every single epoch, right?
That's right.
Higher tax does not mean higher ROI in any sense of the word. So there's some education that needs to happen amongst the delegators as well.
Yeah, it's
I'd like to add, if I could, about the 1% and the Cardano Foundation. I mean, they have been successful, and it only takes a few days at most to get the Cardano Foundation to approve a pool. And they've asked 1% for information, and they could have easily just registered 5 more or 2 more or 3 more and said, we're so popular, we're just preparing for next week. And they probably would have got them approved. But instead, they asked for 26 pools. And when Cardano Foundation said, what are you doing? They apparently didn't give them the information they needed. They pivoted to, we're going to do a 51% TAC test.
And if you don't do it, we're going to threaten you.
It just mathematically, it doesn't even work out. The time to do a 51% attack is at the beginning, not at the end. It's almost mathematically impossible to do now. So it didn't make sense then. It doesn't make sense now. And they could have played more fairly at the beginning, asked for 2 or 3 at a time, and there wouldn't be this problem at all.
Yeah, or Sybil attack, just to correct that. Was it 51% or Sybil? I think it was
They're
Sybil.
pretty much kind of the same in my eye.
Okay.
I don't expect anyone to play fairly in the first place. I mean, I expect that people are going to be acting in self-interest. You know, so which is it, right? Like we have, like they're allowed to act in self-interest, and then they come up against the wall, the protection that's in place, and then they cry foul that there is a protection in place.
Well, yeah, you can either be a champion of decentralization or you can be in it for yourself. And if you're acting in self-interest, what's happening in every case with the ITN of every pseudo-foul actor that's saying, I'm doing this for decentralization, they're doing it for themselves. And that's what's kind of just a little revealing in that sense.
We're all in it for the tech.
Yeah, someone already said that there's nothing preventing anyone from starting a private pool. IOHK has 2 of them with 300 and something million ADA in them. There's nothing to prevent that, except that the wallets don't let you just put in a node ID. You know, as techs, we all know what's happening behind the scenes when somebody clicks a delegation tab on a ticker. But that could easily be a line entry, a node ID. Don't see your stake pool here, click in and put in the node ID now.
Right.
But that's not there. You know, Cardano owns the Daedalus wallet, Ermergo owns the Yoroi wallet, and maybe those will be put in later, and all of this will be for naught.
But that's strictly a user interface issue, right? Like you say, anyone can go in and use JCLI. This is strictly a skill or a education issue than anything.
You're suggesting that they should have the option of being able to paste in a pool ID and join it that way.
I would think that's the most decentralized thing to do. That's what an exchange would want to do. I don't want to use JCLI. I can bring up somebody's wallet, put in the node ID, and delegate to basically a private.
No exchange.
I think that's the next step is they'll create.
Right?
Papacarp, please.
Oh, I just think that that's the next step for them. I mean, I'm of the opinion of this whole thing that it's all fair game within the constructs of the current ITN structure. And I know we could talk about playing, you know, fairly and stuff like that, but ultimately I think we have to test out selfish interest playing the primary role in how this thing in Shelley and the ultimate mainnet rollout. So I think the next step for 1PC is that, okay, you won't do my tickers. I'll just make a wallet now and I'll put it on my website. And if you trust me, look at all these other 1 billion, you know, ADA trust me with their funds. You can trust my wallet, and you'll, you know, sure, our ticker is not in the other wallets, but you don't need it.
Well, I think even 1PCD could just, you know, just create different tickers, right? It doesn't have to be 1PCT. It's the 1%. That's the caveat. That's the carrot for the delegators.
Sure.
The brand. Yeah.
You could do it anonymously, make whatever you want. So what I'll do is I'll summarize this one particular question real quick, because there's a lot of good questions on here and we want to get to all of them. So in general, yes or no, up or down vote is currently is a Sybil attack an issue? Yes, no? I say it's not an issue.
Not an issue.
No.
I'm aware of.
I don't think so.
It doesn't make sense at this point because I think a majority of the stake has been staked. We're still seeing about 30 million to 40 million new ADA come in every day, but out of 10.5 billion, it's really a small percentage. And the Sybil attack is basically somebody not putting their money in, but convincing other people to put their money in and getting more than 51% of the stake and then acting maliciously against that. And at this point, it's difficult to do. It's something that you really want to do at the start when there is less stake. It's just easier. Imagine that there's 10 people that own all of the ADA, and they each own 10%. In order for the malicious actor to act, and he has 10%, he only needs to get 4 out of the other 9 to say, come with me, and we're going to steal some ADA. But since Cardano and Ermergo and the Cardano Foundation own 20%, now they need 4 out of 7 people to act maliciously. And then you add the exchanges, maybe 4 out of 6 people. It's almost impossible to convince that many people to act maliciously and give you the stake to happen. It's easy to do at the beginning because no one's staking yet. But right now it's just almost mathematically impossible.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? Just because someone's delegating to you doesn't mean you control that ADA to let you act maliciously. It's just a delegation. You know what I mean? But yeah. All right. So the second part of that question from Lazy Horse was, is the saturation point K factor currently at 1% enough as we approach 1,000 stake pools on ITN? So really, what he's looking for here is the K factor. Is 1% a good K factor to reach 1,000 pools? What do you guys think?
Seems to work.
Now, if it was set up for like 1,000 pools, wouldn't it cause a lot of the pools to saturate faster? Of course, this is a guy with only 2 million in his pool talking, but
You'd be about right at that point.
Yeah, so basically what the 1% K factor has done right now is it's made about 180 successful pools approximately, according to Pool Tool. Thank you, Papacarp. And so about 180 of them are doing really good. And if you look at the distribution of ROI on Pool Tool on the graph, you'll see that, yeah, it gives you like 180 to 190, and then a bunch of them kind of fall off to one side or whatever. So, but then that leaves out of 600 and almost 700 pools, you got 500 pools that are suffering, because if you were to drop the K factor to 0.1%, that would say, hey, that allows for 1,000 pools. So should we do that?
I think it's too extreme to go to 0.1%. I think when you look at that number of active pools that are actively creating blocks, I guess where that 160 number is coming from, I'd argue that all those pools aren't doing great. You know, they've got relatively low stake compared to guys that are creating 20 plus blocks a day. And from a revenue standpoint, it's not sustainable. So I think K possibly maybe 120, 140, something like that in that realm to kind of open that up a little bit more. But from everything I've seen in Telegram, there's a whole lot of pool operators that are feeling like they're completely on top of their game because they've got uptime. But the game entirely changes when you've got to hit blocks. And so that's another caveat. Going straight to 0.1, I think, would cause chaos. And I think it'd also be unfair to the guys at the top who are doing really great. But there is a subset in that 160 that could use some more delegates and more incentive to drive delegation their way.
So what do you think? What do you guys think? K equal 200, 400?
Well, according to the Cardano incentives white paper, the K, a lot of people are under the misunderstanding that K is the number of pools, valid pools that the protocol is looking for. But the white paper specifically says that the number K is an attempt to get at least 50% of all the stake into that number of pools. And we're at 86% now with K at 100. If IOHK wanted to say, we want to follow the protocol and the incentive model, they'd actually lower K, not raise it. Because we're at 86%, we're at almost 70 when you discount IOHK and Emergo's stake. So K is already overworking at 100.
The math is strong with this one.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Oldpa.
Right now there's 203. Right now there's 203 pools making blocks this epoch, and that represents, 86% of that is in the top 100 pools. So it's already working.
So it sounds like the K factor is probably okay. Yes? No?
It's okay as far as the protocol and the incentive models that IOHK has put in place. It might not be okay as far as the small pool operators are concerned.
Yeah, and I think over time, delegators are going to figure out, delegating to a big pool is not the smartest thing. Now, I think once stake is over 70 million, rewards drop off, your ROI drops off. So, that's why I always tell people ROI is really, the main thing you need to consider. Some of the biggest rewards I've received were from pools that had like 4 or 5 million. Radar is a great one, by the way. They're consistent, if you're splitting the rewards with, just a handful of other delegators, you're going to make more. So I think there's just over time, people will get educated as to how to maximize their profits.
Well, I think what's important for like the new delegator to understand is that the pool gets a certain number of blocks based on its total proportional stake of all the stake. And then you get paid based on your proportion of that pool's stake. So mathematically, it doesn't matter if you stake with a large pool or a small pool. What your decision is, do I want a lot of small rewards, say every day or every other day, or I do want one or two huge rewards twice a year?
Well, what I've seen on that Oldpa actually is I don't know if that's necessarily correct, because I've kind of been monitoring some of the larger pools that get a ridiculous amount of blocks, and you'll notice their rewards, they're capped. So there's a cap on the rewards.
We're discounting capping. When I say a larger pool, I'm saying a pool that's not oversaturated.
Oh, okay, understood.
That's definitely
I see.
bad.
I see, yeah.
I think I've made a few tweets about stay away from those oversaturated.
Yeah, because like one of the IOHK pools has some 230x million delegated to it, and their ROIs are.
Yeah, IOHK has 6 oversaturated pools, and there's 4 more. One of them is an exchange who's should be making 60 blocks, but only makes 6. That actually helps us.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. 5% ROI is nice to compete against.
Yeah.
And thank you, Papacarp, for the screen share to give a visual of what we're talking about here. Can you tell us about what you're showing?
Yeah, so there's just 2 charts in Pool Tool.
There you go.
One of them is the ROI versus stake here. And what you see is that the higher the amount of stake in the pool, the lower the ROI. ROI is here on the left-hand side. And you'll notice this is a logarithmic scale. It's not linear. So there's a huge difference. You're under 10% ROI if you're over in a pool that's over 150 million. But then this thing follows every epoch. We watch this thing. It follows this nice linear line directly up to some of these pools in the lower range that are making 70% annualized ROI. So that's just exactly what we're talking about right now. Is that relationship to the incentive parameters that are built in to manage the number of pools in the system. So they're trying to drive the amount of stake per each pool down with these incentive mechanisms. The problem is, like we talked about, I don't think enough delegators really understand this, or maybe they just don't care, at this stage of the game. They just want to be in a pool that's getting something, every epoch rather than, maybe missing an epoch.
I'd like to add the point that a lot of delegators have trouble even logging into their wallets. So
yeah, that's true.
That's killing us too, I bet. Yeah.
So that's another argument.
I think and then the top one is just blocks produced versus stake. So this is also interesting to just see the variation. So we don't know. You see that like a pool with 100 million in stake, you can be anywhere from 10 blocks, up until about 40 blocks in an epoch. And that's some of that is just the variability that's in the assignments, and some of it is, of course, the variability in the performance of the pool. But that's what we're also tracking here. And the next phase for Pool Tool is actually to add labels so everyone can see the tickers of what pool we're looking at on these charts.
Like one thing about like if you only get a block every few days or every week or something like that, then your stats show it's horrible. People think you're not producing any blocks, and then they move their delegations off of you and take it somewhere else. That's one thing that kind of bothers me about that setup.
It is very hard to grow organically from nothing. I agree with that.
Yeah.
And
that's why we started doing a lifetime ROI as well over here. I don't know if you've seen that yet, but what we do is we look at your performance over all the epochs that you've had and average it out basically. And what you'll see is that some of these smaller pools, they have good ROI, but they won't hit every epoch, right? They'll hit every third epoch or something with a reward, but they still get very high ROI overall. So that's actually a great place for new delegators to go to. These small pools with good uptime.
And you can see that in the previous chart you had up, Papacarp, where if you look at the left-hand side, the lower left-hand side of that graph, notice in the very small pools, it's either down on 0 or it's up really high. So it's a gamble. If you go with the small pool, it's an all or nothing kind of thing. If you hit a block, high rewards. If you don't hit a block, nothing. So this chart does lay out, again, not financial advice, not ever on the Cardano effect, but this is a very good decision aid for people to evaluate where's my target range? What do I want to do? Do I want to gamble and go low, or do I want to go with confident mid to upper, something like that? So nice work on that.
Yeah, we should do lifetime ROI versus stake as well. I think that would be good.
Yeah.
A good chart.
Okay. And then on mainnet, people will know enough about it to be able to get up and running with the lifetime ROI that kind of makes sense. Because on the test net, it was kind of rough in the beginning for a lot of folks, and still rough for a lot of folks right now.
I think to Papacarp, maybe this is just a suggestion, is taking ROI over the last any epochs, right? Just to kind of maybe show accelerated growth of pools, so you can see who's kind of coming up to speed or maybe improving or changing their game. That may go a long way in helping the pool operators too.
Maybe like an ROI trend instead of a block trend, or both.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Somebody might have a temporary problem because jormungandr is breaking on their node, and they finally get it fixed.
Oh yeah, my lifetime ROI is trash, because every time I went up to a block, it was adversarial fork. I just got the crap luck of the draw starting out early, and it's like, man. But things are turning around for us now. So
yeah, nice. All right,
Mine
Philippe.
too.
Okay,
So,
let's
Papacarp, if you're done with the screen share there, and thank you so much for that. That was a great idea.
And we'll move over to the next Reddit question. So thank you to Lazy Horse for that question. The next question is from WDY43DI. And this question says, what would you suggest for pools that cannot get enough stake to create a block?
I'll take this one. So my new pool, which is still top secret, I'm going to try an experiment, and I'm going to offer special incentives to delegators with over 1 million ADA. And if you're interested in this, email me at graffwebdev@gmail. What I'm going to do for 10 days is I'm going to offer 500 real ADA per day for someone to delegate 1 million test data to my new pool.
I think Frog's going to do it based on his expression.
I'm gonna.
Oh yeah,
I might do that.
I got a plan for sure. Yeah, that's great, Chris. I wasn't going to give him real ADA, but I run a Doja too, and it's custom Wi-Fi control system. So I was basically going to enable people with free systems. It's BYOH, bring your own hardware. You can use open hardware and more or less hook a motion detect up. And now you've got a motion detect sentry that'll send alerts that you can customize at random points during the day. It's a really cool system that we're actually aligning for tokenization on Cardano. So I'm going to kind of edge that in, and 1 million was my price point too for the higher end of that. So that's an interesting way. But yeah, I think incentives is one way to do it. If you want to get social, that's another way to do it. You've got to get in the gutter and kind of really just get out there and be seen as relatively knowledgeable and engage. And that's one method. And then for you new stake pools, we do have a Bootstrap initiative. So you can find me on Telegram at a Doja Wolf, and I can get you into that group, and you can get on a list. And we're rotating through pools that want a little chance, but you want to get your pool up and make sure you're on point, because it's kind of a one shot. You get 2 epochs to really make it happen. Mm-hmm. So that's another method.
Your Telegram name was John Wick.
I have a Discord channel set up. It's used a little bit, it's not real active yet, but I'm trying to make myself really available to people. My large staker, I send him daily updates. He put over 1 million in, so I give him daily updates of what's going on, just to make sure he doesn't ever want to leave,
Yeah, I've got one like that too. He's been awesome.
Those are all good ideas, and the key question was, what would you suggest for pools that cannot get enough stake to create a block? And I might have mentioned this before, but Cardano, this is brilliant marketing, theoretically would have 600 marketers out there, an army of marketers, if they want their stake pool to be successful. I've had a few times people ask me if I can promote their pool. Well, I just personally can't do it because I don't know your pool, I don't know your hardware, I don't know your skills. But each person can promote their own and try to identify all these different techniques for how do you get enough stake. For example, So, sorry, Philippe, I didn't mean to intervene on that question, but we good?
Yeah, I think so. I think
Yeah.
so. I think that answered that question.
I think one other secret, and I'm not kidding about this. Go on the Cardano effect.
Yep,
No joke.
absolutely.
That helps.
AKA.
I agree. I totally agree with that.
Awesome.
Thank you, Chris.
And anyone, we have a stake pool operator Telegram channel. We do these. We've done several of them already. Any stake pool operator, come and show your face. Come and talk to us. We don't vet anyone. We just open up the lines of communication and then we record. So any pool that wants to come on, 1%, Lion, anyone, come on the podcast. Let's have a talk. All right, Rick, next question.
Yeah, it's perfect segue from Old Crypto Geek. How are you marketing your pool currently?
I'm not really.
Or anyone, but go ahead.
I'm not really marketing my pool, to be honest with you. I'm focused on trying to learn as much as I can for mainnet. The idea is to be ready for mainnet when this actually matters. Marketing isn't exactly my focus.
Yeah, it's good to have, if you have one brilliant marketer, that would outperform 500 developers and DevOps people, right? So the people who are working on Cardano right now, building pools, are not necessarily marketers. They're DevOps related hobbyists and stuff like that. Although Philippe's a brilliant marketer. I'll give you that, Philippe.
That's a really good point, Rick. I had to reach out to some individuals that I feel would do a better job at it than myself. So that's going to be their wheelhouse.
Okay. Yeah. So the key here is, how you're marketing your pool. And what I've seen is folks like Pegasus built that Pegasus app. You got Pool Tool. You got with love, and then you got 3 different words for love. I did not know that. That was brilliant. Mm-hmm. Put it in different languages. Some suggestions that I had is making YouTube channels, making a good website that people want to visit, and it has to be brief. Website has to get somebody's attention in like 2 seconds or less. Yep. Anything on social media, if you get your social media posts out there, and you don't want to overspam Twitter like me, like I overspam Twitter. But anyway, and have a good presence where you're providing something of people of interest. And just a thought is, if you're on social media and you're saying, look at my pool because it's great, that only goes so far. You got to provide something else.
Yeah.
Okay?
One of the things we did with Adafrog is on the homepage, we've got bubbles that come up. And if you start popping the bubbles, they'll start releasing seed words for real wallets with data in them. And so we've had some pools actually sponsor one, Canadian Cardano, or it's Kaka pool. Actually, someone just won 1,000 ADA the other day from his pool. So it's gimmicky in a lot of ways, but if any pool operators want to sponsor a pool, just set up a wallet. We'll deal with the keywords, and what we've been doing is releasing, I think 6. I'll probably drop it down to 5, but we've also got a jackpot that we're releasing every week. So the pool operator throws in, some amount of Cardano into that jackpot, and then we'll release a seed word from that every week. So some people it's interesting, it's gimmicky, but things like that help draw a little bit of buzz. So if you guys can be creative, but in the light of this 1% issue, I think pool operators are going to have to do something different rather than just running a pool. You're going to have to be involved with a project. You're going to have to offer some sort of external incentive to kind of, get the community to really not mind paying a little bit higher tax, and that could be through ROI too, as simple as that. But yeah, I just think we're all going to have to get a little creative.
Yeah, and even marketing outside of the regular crypto community, because if you're Cardano marketing to Cardano, okay, that's the primary target. But if you can expand beyond the horizon and draw in more new people in,
absolutely, that's going to come into a totally different game in mainnet, is bringing on new people, and you'll see pool operators basically probably running local advertising campaigns just to accrue, maybe institutional guys, and managing it on a more direct basis.
Yes.
JSCS pool, we just, all of our marketing is one Twitter post a day with some statistics, and I try to add at the top of the statistics some tidbit about Cardano that people might not know or understand. So just trying to evangelize the.
So yeah, Oldpa, what you've been doing is fantastic. It's great for everybody. I enjoy those stats. I think everybody enjoys those stats, and I think they're invaluable.
Thank you, Kyle.
Okay. Rick, we have like 20 more minutes on this podcast, and we have a lot of questions to hit on Reddit. So I propose that we do more of a speed round for these next few questions, and try to get through as many community questions as possible. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, Rick, I don't know if you want to answer these questions now or you want to answer them tomorrow in the live stream. Well, it would be yesterday's live stream, but we have a question from GRVRVR. I have a question about the latest Cardano Foundation video. What is meant by an ADA-dominated structured project? And there's also another question by AA Kerjelm saying, can you elaborate on the partnership between Cardano, IBM, and the EU? Are we going to be focusing on operator questions, or do you want to touch into some of the news stories that's been going on with Cardano, or can we just skip over those for now?
We'll have to skip over those for now because no one person can answer for another person. You know, I can't read minds. Sorry.
Okay. So let us move to the Sean Nim question. Thanks for providing a great service and great information to the community. Thank you, Sean. I wonder if pool operators are using multiple nodes and promoting, demoting them dynamically, or if the network stability since 0.8.6 has reduced the need for that, since my own pool has been up over 7 days with no restarts and made every block since 0.8.6 was released.
Okay. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
It's almost
I'm
unbelievable.
doing that manually at times. You know, if I see, you know, I have a slot approaching, and maybe my my main node is, you know, falling behind, having trouble keeping up. You know, I'll start the other one. You guys have backup nodes as well?
I agree with that strategy, but what I'm not doing is I'm not automating that in a sense, because I've noticed from each rev of Yorm, things change. You know, before we got stuck a lot, now we lag a lot. So writing scripts for each rev is a little silly. So for me, I'm more or less attentive to my blocks and counting on the fact that jormungandr is going to stabilize. And at that point, I'll figure out a viable passive node automation strategy.
If you look in the GitHub, there's a like a ticket under a little project board that talks about being able to just, you know, dynamically change the settings and everything through the JCLI. So you can take like just a totally passive node that was never started as a leader and then elevate it to a leader and then demote it and so forth through the API. So that's coming. I think that'll make a lot of that much easier.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm using, the failover
script. I had to do automation as well. I have Pool Tool running on 8.6 or 8.7 right now, just because it's very stable, and it always just cranks along and never falls behind for me. But I found that those revs don't make blocks. They just miss, and I'm not sure exactly why yet. So my pools are actually running on the lower revs still, and and when one gets stuck, I have to demote it and promote another one. So I'm having to do that. And unfortunately, guys, I do need to take off. So I told you guys I'd say goodbye. So if anyone has some comments on that, we can talk about it. But otherwise, I got to take off.
Pool Tool's been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Papacarp. Please come back.
Yes, I'd love to come back. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Yourself. All right, Rick, let us jump on to the next question from University.
Okay, and yeah, we are going to go through speed round because people make fun of me for saying speed round, then it's not a speed round. So, thank you for that. Yeah, it happens over and over again. All right, so he's got a very long question in the speed round, but so I'll parse it out. In my view, decentralization of the network is ensuring the nodes are scattered more or less evenly among individuals, businesses, and geographic locations. Earlier we referred to as entities. That was a good, James Kelly called it entities. That's a good way of putting it. So continuing the question, while centralization is anything that allows, directly or indirectly, one person, entity, or state with enough resources to aggregate multiple pools. Currently, what we have is the possibility of centralization of the network due to the ability of having multiple stake pools ran by the same operator. Yes, that ability is there. The pledge solution offered has two drawbacks. Only the wealthy will have a chance of running a pool, and if a billionaire starts 1,000 pools, a decent pledge is good enough to start. So this kind of leads back to decentralization network and pledge. So to kind of cut to the core is, what do you guys think about pledge, and will it help with decentralization? Let's kind of like shorten the question and frame it like that. What's your take on pledge, and will it help with decentralization, or is it?
I'd like to jump in on that one. According to the incentives white paper, pledge is going to be used as a means to prevent pool operators from splitting their funds up into a whole bunch of different pools, because the more pledge you have, you're going to get a slightly increased reward, better than just your stake amount proportional. So it encourages pool operators to get a large pledge and keep it as big as you can in one spot. So that is going to create less pools. So someone would say that that decreases decentralization. But the rewards are twofold. You can also start punishing people. And I think Charles Hoskinson, in one of his the videos, started talking about using pledge as a way to punish people. I'm not sure that's quite the way to go, but that's what the whole idea behind pledge is. And if they take their pledge away, they won't get rewards.
Oldpa Sync, I want to add on to that question, ask you a follow-up question. So the effects of pledge is to increase the stake pool operators' rewards by a certain degree, but wouldn't the saturation point be negating those effects in the end? So you have a pool that's oversaturated. Isn't that counterbalancing the pledge and pretty much negating it after a certain degree?
Well, some of the pool operators disagree with me in my belief that it doesn't matter where you put your stake. In the long run, you'll get the same amount, because it's all based on proportionality. You would want to pledge to a pool that has a certain amount of stake and won't take that away. You could pledge to a pool that you really like, and then the pledge goes away, and now a 30 million pool becomes a 2 million pool, and you're not getting as many rewards. So you would want to pledge to a pool under the new incentive scheme in mainnet, if they integrate pledge, that has a lot of pledge, because those pool operators will actually be punished for pooling their pledge. And so you could be assured that you're in a pool that's always going to make at least a certain number of blocks.
Yeah, and that's with the assumption the pool operator is able to make blocks consistently, effectively.
Correct.
Yeah, I think pledge is an interesting character in here, because if you look in Daedalus, it's on the tab. It's on the pop-up tab. So originally, pledge was part of the plan, but plans change. So maybe it's not so much. I never looked at it as a punishment. I just learned something from you, Oldpa, is it could be seen as a punishment, or maybe not a punishment, but a restriction that causes a pool operator to have to put the pledge up. So what's the real difference between pledge and stake? Right now, there's no difference, but maybe in the future?
Right. In the future, the pledge will be put in by the owners of the pool, and you can have multiple owners of a pool. And the more pledge there is, then the math is kind of weird, but the more pledge you put in, then you will get more rewards than just your proportional stake allows. And it encourages pool operators to make that as large as possible. They're not going to make it larger to oversaturate the pool, obviously, but they're going to make it large enough to incentivize people to go to that pool and fill it up.
What that does, though, for smaller pool operators is it drastically raises the stakes of the ITN, because those pool operators need to secure enough TATA while they can to be able to commensurate a potentially crippling pledge amount to stay relatively competitive.
That's true, but it also opens up the possibility. Think longer term, because you can have multiple owners and the owners are preserved in the blockchain. Small pool operators could get together and say, I'm gonna be an owner in your pool, and then have their delegations move. So you can create alliances.
It's going to be necessary, but it kind of goes back to what OCG was saying. A lot of these pool operators don't necessarily have the marketing skills and potentially skills to go and forge those alliances, I would say. A lot of guys just kind of like to stick to themselves and stay a little quiet too. So I think it depends on what that number is. And I don't know what it is. So I can't really, we're kind of looking at every situation and how it's going to play out. So if it's a 5 million ADA pledge, that's going to be painful as opposed to something closer to 100K.
If there's like 10 pool operators get together, then you just kind of centralize things a little bit too, didn't you?
In a way.
No, I disagree. I think if people team up to form an effective group, that I don't think that's centralization, because there's 7 billion people on planet Earth. I always take something to an extreme to test it, and if you get a group, because there already are groups. Like right now I have a team of 3 people. I couldn't do this on my own. Yep. There's no freaking way. I got a small team of 3 people, and we only run 2 pools.
Yeah. And Kyle, I think, this could be the natural, a next step for a doja. Maybe you haven't thought about it this way, but you're already forming those alliances.
Possibly. Yeah. Well, I've got some delegators now that I've got good relationships with. And I think push comes to shove, those are going to be my primary. Hey, you want to at least help sponsor me in this way, and we'll work something out on that regard and use those lead delegators.
Right.
Where I'm taking a doja is, I've got guys doing all kinds of crazy things with it. They're growing all kinds of plants in different countries in the world. And my whole play there is they're creating data IP, how they get these devices to work via just controlling input outputs and times like that, having them be able to monetize that by selling them to other users, so less sophisticated users can just plug stuff together, buy a profile. And that's where smart contracts and tokenization comes in. So that's kind of the path I'm on with that.
I see.
Yeah, but that's, all these things I'm doing is creating more real world introductions. So you're right on that.
Yeah. And what's encouraging to me is, now that we're talking this through, there's something built into the protocol now that's encouraging people to work together, instead of just kill or be killed.
Oh, absolutely. It could have been a free for all, but I'll honestly say the relationships I've forged with each one of you individually has been pretty awesome, and at the root of it, we're competitors in a sense, but at the end of the day, I think we're all going to be there, and we all care about the same things. And, that's awesome.
Yeah. It's really cool that the community of pool operators got together, and with the help of Papacarp, we're actually taking our own individual data that is private to us and transmitting it out to a central location so that we can have access to everyone else's data and determine whether or not we're on tip or not on tip and make adjustments. So the alliances have already started.
That's right. And just to sort of, take a 10,000 foot view, sort of big picture, cryptocurrency isn't about money or replacing banks, or it's not solving a data storage problem. We're taking the next step with trust. Our societies, we organize as humans around people with similar values, obviously geographic locations. We have governments and rules to enforce trust, but now we are, really building the next step. This is about building trust in a new way. And so when I hear about these sorts of relationships, alliances, it's very exciting.
Yeah. And alliances aren't bad. You have the NFL, National Football League, for example, in the US, and it's an alliance of competitors. It's a team of competitors. I'm competing with all you guys right now. That doesn't mean I don't have to not like you. I can still like you and be a competitor. Yeah, hey, all right, guys, game on, right? I love Papacarp's thing with a little, put a little crown on it.
Yeah, I know, you beat me last night.
Yeah, who's gonna get this way? Look at that go, man! You can compete with somebody who you still like. So alliances are okay, and 1 billionaire can take us all out.
Well, I think if that comes to a fruition where we've got external third parties trying to really raise hell, you're damn well going to see some alliances. And, and they're starting to form here as we've already moved forward, Yeah,
and they're not bad. It's a good, healthy thing for things to naturally take their course.
What's good for the network is good for each of us, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even that billionaire probably didn't get to be a billionaire by throwing his money away by trashing the network in the first place.
Yeah, that's right. The billionaire didn't become a billionaire because they're just giving everything away. But it's true. One big conglomerate could like take over the whole thing. They got enough horsepower, enough resources. So someday that may be the case. 2 or 3 years from now, if Cardano is very successful, you might see teams of pool operators competing with Microsoft and Google and Amazon and all the big hitters and saying, hey, this is the core devs. We're the original Satoshi Nakamoto's of Cardano, and we got to team up and join forces to defeat the whatever.
If IBM wants to acquire enough stake on the open market to compete, then I'm all for that.
Jeff Bezos, I'm available. Just putting that out there.
The questioner here on the Reddit was really concerned a lot about centralization. And I think the protocol itself, and right now we've got IOTK doing the development of it. I would think that there's probably a huge sign on the wall that says, is the change we're about to make going to increase decentralization? Because Charles Hoskinson said that's the goal. They said also that they'll never reach it, but it's always the goal. And they probably do ask themselves every time they make a change, is this going to increase decentralization? And I like that about the protocol.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. So, Rick, we have a few more minutes. Let's hit the last 2 questions and let's wrap it up. So the next question is from Foxinator37. Are any of the operators here currently abusing the forking exploit? If so, what's your reasoning or thought behind it being rectified at a protocol level versus blacklist?
No.
Any of us are exploiting it, but
no.
One thing just from a security perspective, it occurs to me that if somebody were to lose their keys, if somebody got a hold of your keys, then they could abuse your keys by forking the network, opportunistically to get themselves, into a better position. So you definitely want to protect your keys.
I would like to see a disincentive for that behavior in the Haskell code.
I'm not currently abusing it, but I was at the beginning. Whenever the first came out, working very well. So I just copied the node secret over to another one and turned that one on. And I was like, let me see if this one works any better. I left the other one running. I was guilty as all get up,
Yeah.
But the people currently doing it know what they're doing wrong, and that's the key. Is anyone abusing and exploiting that feature? I don't know if it's a bug. I'll call it a feature, right? The forking exploit. And yes, there are people, but it's abated. It's dropped back a lot. It used to be really bad.
The community has really pushed back on those people who are doing these adversarial forks, and those people doing the adversarial forks have cut them down, if not completely, to very, very.
It is not intentional at this point. I'm pretty confident of that. Any adversarial fork is someone tweaking their passive node strategy and just kind of having issues with scripting. So I don't think it's a intentional factor at this point.
It is a test net, and the idea is to test it. But if you test something and find out that it should not work the way it's intended, then you report it and then stop doing it. That to me is the moral thing to do. And JSCS has never done any even unintentional forks because we only run one node.
Yeah, and I think it's important for everyone to understand that these intentional forkings are truly harming operators' business operations, particularly when you're coming and trying to grow organic stake. When you get one block every couple epochs and then all of a sudden you're missing it because it's happening right after a fork, you got to start all over. And that's just can be devastating after you've been pushing it for 20 hours straight, just trying to make sure everything's fine. You're up at 4 in the morning or 3 in the morning, making sure you hit your block. And it's just, it's a kick in the teeth. And I get that, that's how it is right now. And you're more than welcome to do that. But if I can find you, we'll take retribution. That's not fair.
I got up to about 5 million in stake at one point.
John Wick's coming for you. Adversarial forking.
I got kids to feed, man.
Well, thanks to Papacarp's giving me access to his data, I put it together, and what he gave me access to was how many competitive forks there were. And that included adversarial forks, but there aren't that many of those anymore, a couple a day. And I ran 5 epochs worth of data and found out that between 16 and 20% of all blocks are competitive blocks. So 1 in 5 of your blocks are up for competition that you're either going to win or not win. And if you want to play devil's advocate, then just say, I'm going to lose them all and take 10% off what you thought you were going to make in the first place. And anything above that is just gravy.
Now, Oldpa, are there any chances of that data being tainted with this new revelation that Papacarp realized that someone was pushing false information to Pool Tool?
No, the Pool Tool information that Papacarp is talking about is they're pushing a different tip, which makes people that have a script to restart their system based on what tip they're on mess up.
Well,
But
he was also
it doesn't mess up the data.
Well, he was also stating they were pushing data with different node IDs to show you, so you'd see different competitive forks that didn't even exist.
Yeah, on the website, he said he turned off the adversarial fork listing, saying that somebody was putting
and the competitive forks.
Yeah.
In the competitive forks data, he's taken that directly off the chain, I believe, not from reporting. And so the chain is saying this block came in with this hash and this block came in with that hash. That's my understanding.
I think that's inaccurate, because even last night Rick posted a competitive fork with IOHK1 versus someone else. IOHK1 with a very specific block hash. The very next one was IOHK1 versus IOHK1 with the old block hash and a new one. So there's no way that that could have happened without either a strict bug in Pool Tool or somebody spoofing the data.
Yeah, someone spoofed it. Or I think Papacarp figured it out at some point, but someone took the previous one, posted it, and the next one they could get. So really, the blockchain is fine.
They would have to be doing that for a week on purpose because the data has been consistent for a week.
Yeah, so the blockchain is fine.
Okay.
The web page is attackable. They can't attack the blockchain. So
Right.
they basically just spoofed bad data into the web page.
Yeah, they were using the send my tip script to spoof. Yes.
I see.
Yeah. Yeah. So OCG, you were saying something on this matter. Are you good to go? What you got, buddy?
No, I don't have anything to add at this point.
Okay, cool, man. Thanks. Philippe, our last one.
Yes, sounds good. You want to take it?
Okay, yeah, this is from Cap Nemo Mac, and he says, how much ADA do you make per epic in rewards? How are you determining whether or not running a stake pool is worth the investment of time and money for equipment, hosting, power, or etc.? So what do you think, guys? What are you making in rewards, and is it worth your time?
I think we should just stick with the second part of the question. You know,
to avoid financial advice.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys want to tell how much you're making, that's fine as well. But
yeah,
I guess, a yes or no, if it's worth it and why,
I'm planning for the future.
I think most people thinking about getting into a pool just need to look at the numbers. IOHK is chipping in 3.8 million ADA a day for rewards and taking back 10% to go into a treasury. That leaves, on average, of course, there's always randomness, but on average, a person who stakes to any pool over the long run will get about 32 to 34 ADA per 100,000 staked. And the pools themselves, as Rick has talked about, the race to the bottom, these pools themselves are at 1% pool at the current oversaturation. They're getting 345 ADA a day. That's $15. There's 10 countries in Africa that's a day's wage, but in America, you can't sustain yourself on $15 a day. So now when Cardano is 40 cents and that's $150 a day, then okay, that'd be good. But I think we're away from 40-cent Cardano.
Yeah, I think to make a living now as a pool operator, as your sole income, you're going to have a pretty rocking pool, pretty close to saturation, and banging out really great performance. And there's definitely coming from nothing. It's a long road.
I'd like to speak on that. I have a 4-person team, and right now it's not worth the time or money to run a pool. But given that it's January 2020, we've ridden out the bear market. The people that are still left, obviously, right now we're not really concerned about the monetary incentive of running a pool or ADA in general. The prices are deprecated, but if you look at it from if a business analyst was to look at your pool, or some outside party or outside entity were to look at your pool, they would probably just say, "What are you doing?" Because the ROI is just it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't.
Tell
But
them you're saving up to buy a pizza.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, I guess there's a degree of speculation for all pool operators that what you do now, maybe you'll have a self-running business in a few years. If Cardano ever reaches a certain price, then it could fuel a lifestyle. But right now, we're not at that point. I don't think any of the pool operators are making bank, to tell you the truth.
But
Are you guys?
Actually, we can't because the money's not over on the real net yet anyway.
Yeah,
so.
that's true. That is true.
I want to hear what old Crypto Geek has to say about this. What you got, buddy?
I'm just curious if you guys are covering your operating expenses with the fixed rate, with the fixed fee.
No.
No.
I think a fixed fee is a bad idea, just given that I traders, but I have a feeling Cardano is going to go somewhere significant. And I think having a fixed fee in place could be potentially detrimental to your business model.
I said mine's 0.
Yeah, the JSCS pool has 0 fixed fees.
Okay.
I
Can
tell
I add
people
some input into this, guys? Okay, in January of 2009, when Satoshi Nakamoto mined like the first 50 Bitcoin per something or other, I can't remember what it was. At the time, that Bitcoin was worth like a half a penny. So we're at that phase right now. So these little ADA and TATA that we're collecting today it's not worth the effort. I couldn't buy pizza. I mean, it's worth the effort. It's worth the effort because it's rewarding and it's fun and we're enjoying this and we're having a great time, right? All you guys would probably agree with that. But
I think you're saying it's worth the effort because you think the value of the coin is going to increase over time, right? So you're saying that the money you're earning today eventually will look really good, but today it looks like shit.
Yeah.
Today it's modest, I would say.
That's why I said I'm planning for the future. Plus, there's more to come, like the smart contracts and so forth. I'm sure there's going to be ways of making some money off of that as well, doing the processing. And I'm working to see if I can get my local government to switch over property records and so forth when that potential is there. I'm already shaking the trees to get things going in that direction. I think it'd be great if somebody could buy and sell a house completely on the blockchain. You cut out the lawyers, you cut out the title searches, you cut out the title insurance. I mean,
you can even open up microtransactions, so you're selling pieces of properties, right?
Oh yeah, well, the mortgage could be handled through a smart contract, and the seller could partially finance it. People could bid on it, bid on the interest rate and so forth. They could even be anonymous, I suppose. And then when the buyer pays to an address on that smart contract, the funds get distributed. I mean, so you knock out the banks too. I mean, that's the future I'm seeing, and that's what I'm investing in.
Yeah, I agree. Smart contracts are going to be wild, and that's kind of where I started. But it was just like, okay, we're taking a really long time to get there, so maybe I'll do this, and kind of contribute in that sense too. Even wills would be awesome on smart contracts. You cut out everybody. You'd have a simple smart contract where you pay a fee to it, open up an account, then you create 5 or 6 addresses that can pull from that. And if you don't interact with that smart contract for 6 months, those addresses can then pull whatever their inheritance is, and everyone's out of the equation.
Or if you're an American, the Social Security Administration publishes the Social Security numbers about 6 months afterward of anybody who's deceased, so it could automatically trigger a payout.
Yeah, if you had a good oracle for that, absolutely.
These are brilliant. You guys are answering the question we skipped earlier today. And James, I was really glad to hear you say that you're taking personal action at the local level, because I'll often hear people say, hey, when is the Cardano Foundation going to give us mass adoption? Now, that's not the question, but that's really what they're getting at. And it's, what is the individual? That's brilliant, man. You're talking to local people, small businesses, small city council. Hey, city council, you want to put real estate on this blockchain? It works out really good. It's efficient. So what can each individual do to help build the efficiencies that we need in society? It's a great point. And
the first use case that I see for smart contracts is this incentives that I mentioned earlier for small pools trying to get off the ground. So, right now, I, as I mentioned earlier, like email me if you want to be a part of that with my next pool. But, that's a perfect use case for smart contracts.
You could make it entirely trustless process. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to wrap this question up. Thank you for that. If you guys got any parting thoughts, have those prepared. Philippe's going to lead us out in just a moment. But that last question there was from Cap Numi Mac. We appreciate it. And the key question was, how are you determining whether or not running a stake pool is worth the investment? And I think the general consensus here is it's not the financial investment that we're getting right now. It's the knowledge, experience, and that we're getting is worth the investment. I think so. What do you think, guys?
Exactly.
Yes.
We're also Satoshi Nakamoto.
And to give Papacarp a little props, I remember him writing something in the Telegram group saying that, just imagine, years from now, you'll be sitting with your grandchildren saying, I was there when Cardano was launched. So that's pretty cool.
I'd like to point out to just to the stakers, not necessarily to the stake pool operators, but the people just who have Cardano, who believe in Cardano, you need to stake your Cardano. And maybe you missed the snapshot, but there might be another one. And even when it goes to mainnet, you want to stake the money, the ADA that is being created, just like Bitcoin, just like all the other cryptocurrencies. That ADA is coming. It wasn't there yesterday. It's being created, and it's monetary inflation. And if you're not participating, then your share of the network is getting diluted every day. Every day, you might have bought 1.1% of all ADA, but tomorrow it's going to be less than that because new ADA was created. And if you want to look out 10 years from now and say, wow, I remember when Bitcoin or when the Cardano was $1 billion and now it's worth $10 billion market cap, your ADA should be worth 10 times more. But if you're not participating in the staking, it's not going to be worth 10 times more. It's going to be less than that because they created more. It is capped at 45 billion, but between now and then, we got a third to go. You know what I mean? So stake your ADA, stake it.
All right. Thanks for that, Oldpa Sync. I want to thank Oldpa, Kyle, Chris, James, OCG for coming on the Cardano Effect podcast today. We really appreciate you. I want to leave, the final thoughts are yours, so I'm going to pass the floor to you. Can you remind viewers again where they should stake, what your pools are, and any projects that you're working on, anything that you wanted to tell the viewers of the Cardano Effect or the listeners of the Cardano Effect? So let's start with Oldpa and then just work our way around.
Well, the pool is JSCS pool, and I encourage you to use Twitter, Oldpa Sync, and keep up to date. And thanks for watching.
Kyle?
Yeah, I run Frog again, and, I'm trying to do a lot of things in the community. And obviously delegation helps. So if you guys are looking for a decent pool, we've got our footing. We're providing some pretty good ROI, and you can find me in the Telegram groups. So I'm around.
All right. Chris?
Yeah. First off, thanks to my delegators. I always appreciate the support. My pool again is MASTR Stake, MASTR. I'm launching a second pool. If you're interested in the incentive program that I mentioned earlier, email me at graffwebdev@gmail.com. And as always, if you want to set up a new pool, I offer those consulting services as well.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. James?
My pool is called Stake Army. The ticker's AKA. And, it's a small pool right now, but I'm really focused on it. And I'm easily accessible. I have a Discord channel. You can ask me questions. I'll guide you through whatever.
Okay. Last but not least, OCG.
Thank you. Phoenix Stake Pool, PHX. And you can find us on Twitter and Telegram and all the regular channels.
Okay. Well, thanks, guys and girls that are listening or viewing the Cardano Effect podcast. Remember, we recorded this on a Saturday. Everyone here is taking time out of their weekend to come and just chat about Cardano. If that's not passion, I don't know what is. So if you're thinking about the next stake pool that you want to delegate to, please check all of these guys out. They really know what they're doing, and they're on top of this. And like we were saying before, it's 2020, January 2020 right now. We're in the barest of bear markets. Prices have been deprecated. These are the people that are in the trenches right now. So remember the faces, remember their pools, and show them your support. So until the next episode of the Cardano Effect podcast, bye, everyone.
Take care.